Imagine not being able to read the paper because your hands were shaking. Imagine not being able to read newsprint as your world faded to black. The National Federation of the Blind, Newsline, Indiana. With your host, Lee Martin, and co-host, Florence Myers-McSwine.
Welcome to this week's National Federation of the Blind Newsline Indiana show. And we are excited about our guest today, as she has been a guest here before. And Lee, let's talk a little bit about NFB Newsline.
Yes, I want to thank our guests for coming on once again, Jennifer Strother. And we just want to look at NFB Newsline and share a little bit more information about this great service. It is a fantastic service, and it is a service that is free, audio information for blind and print challenged individuals. So stay tuned as you listen to our broadcast and enjoy the commercials, because they have a lot of information and a lot of contact information of how to reach us for this fantastic service. So Florence, I know you use the magazines quite frequently. You want to talk a little bit about the magazines?
I certainly will. I would love to do that. I love reading the newspapers as well as the magazines. One of my favorite is Guideposts, of course. I love reading Time magazine. There's a magazine called Wired, which is very interesting. There's magazine WebMD, which gives me a lot of information, health topics and things like that. There's Shape magazine. There's AARP magazines for people such as us who are senior citizens. There's magazines for children. There's Parents magazine. And there is a magazine for everyone.
And that's so fantastic. We have added Toastmasters magazine to the publications. So it's very interesting to read the Toastmasters, those that are working on public speaking and speaking in period, that you would enjoy the Toastmasters magazine. Also, we have over 500 newspapers and other publications, and I'm very interested in our breaking news publications. There's 44 publications in breaking news, and some of those are like ABC's News, Advocate Magazine, Apple Insider, the BBC, and the Bloomberg, CBS News, and CNN, just a few. There's also a new publication on there called Root, R-O-O-T, a great publication. So check out the publications that we have on breaking news. We also have on there Indiana State's specific channel. There, individuals from Indiana or elsewhere can find resources in Indiana regarding the NFB Newsline service. Let's see, there is so much more that we can offer with this NFB Newsline service, such as international publications. And some of those publications are Jerusalem Post, Israel publication, Japan, and so forth. Individuals love to go to those 14 different international publications that we have, and it's very informative. We always believe that through NFB Newsline, with blind and print challenged citizens, that this is a source that allows us to get information, as we know that informed citizens make informed decisions in all capacities, and we have that capability with NFB Newsline. So be sure to check out our NFB Newsline information, and be sure to get in contact with us as we are signing up people through NFB Newsline, as well as through our state sponsor, the Indiana State Library. So go ahead.
I'm sorry, Lee. I didn't want us to forget about the basic Knfb Reader, which is also included in NFB Newsline.
Oh, what a great tool, Florence. Thanks for that reminder. I had to use it last night. And I tell you, it is a great source, a great tool to have. And once again, that's a free tool that generally runs around $100 for that app. So check out that and check out NFB Newsline. And we will be right back with our guests that are here for part 2, all the way from Nevada. So stay tuned.
As I travel the nation, I read NFB Newsline.
I live in Valparaiso, Indiana, and I listen to my local news on NFB Newsline.
As a student, I enjoy reading current events on NFB Newsline.
Learn more by calling 855-963-6476 or visit nfbnewsline-in.org.
Subscribe free to NFB Newsline today.
Welcome back to this segment of the National Federation of the Blind Newsline Indiana. And as we mentioned earlier, we have a very exciting guest. This is part 2 on, we have Miss Jennifer Strother from Las Vegas, Nevada. And Jennifer, welcome back to our show.
Thank you for having me back.
Yeah, we are so excited to have you back to share more information as we learn more about you and some of your challenges and some of your goals that you have accomplished as far as, you as a person and as a mother. And we do know that throughout the country, we've been working as an organization with the National Federation of the Blind on making sure that parents with disabilities and blindness rights are not smashed in the courts and with the different DCS programs throughout the country, and that the law is being upheld so that parents with disabilities won't be challenged, whether they're fostering, adopting, or just the natural parents of a child. So tell us a little bit about, just recap a little bit about your sight condition and how you've overcome that.
Okay, so I have a rare form of retinitis pigmentosa that I was born with. I have always been visually impaired, never had 20/20. I was able to see colors for a little bit, shadows for a little longer, and by the time I was 18, I was totally blind with, I would say totally blind with iffy light perception. When I say iffy, because sometimes I can tell when a light is on, but most of the time I can't tell. That is it as far as my eye condition goes. I am a mother. I am currently a student. I started school in March for massage therapy. I am a motivational speaker, a blind YouTuber, and I wear many hats in the NFB.
Now, at any point in your upbringing, are you an only child, or can you tell us a little bit about your growing up, being visually impaired, blind?
Oh, I can tell you so much. I have 2 siblings. I have a younger sister and brother. I have awesome parents. My mother was terrified about me being blind, of course, but we had support from I was raised in Cleveland, Ohio, and I had a worker there. Her name was Nola Webb. This lady was with me until I graduated from high school. She actually postponed her retirement until I graduated from high school. But she was totally blind, and she helped my mother through things. My mother was afraid for me. And she explained to my mother that she actually not explained, she told my mother that she was not going to handicap me and that she was going to treat me like she would treat any other child. She was really bossy and I loved her for it. So I was raised, the first thing that my parents and my grandparents put into my head was that there is nothing that you can't do. You can do anything that you want to, you can be anything that you want to be. So I had no idea what I can't meant. Like, you couldn't tell me what I couldn't do growing up. Sometimes I had self-esteem issues, which is normal. And it was my belief that I couldn't do something, but it wasn't because someone else told me that I couldn't do it. If someone else told me I couldn't do it, that was just motivation for me to do something. So I tell people now, the best thing that you can tell me is that I can't do something, because I'm going to go out my way to prove you wrong.
That is so encouraging, because I just heard Dwayne Wade speak on this, and he's let this little statement come out that your doubt is not as strong as my belief. And that really does relate to that, what you just said. So I think that's just fantastic of you and your family. So with that doubt and your belief in you and your family's belief in you, you become a very successful and level-headed and balanced citizen, coping with blindness. The only thing seems to be wrong is just you deal with blindness on a daily basis. And there's nothing wrong about that in our society, because we know that we can live the life we want. So talk about some of the other obstacles that you see that blind citizens are going through as we progress with our education. And since you're back in school and Florence is in school as well, you guys can both speak on that.
It's amazing to me how, well, I think this is the case with people in general. Some people struggle with things that other people don't struggle with. I do know that blind people do struggle with employment. I don't see very many people struggling with education. It's a struggle to get what you need with for your education. But if you really want to do it, you improvise. Right. I've been in school for a month and I have not received the adaptive equipment that I was supposed to receive to help me through college. Yet we're still waiting to receive that. But I managed my first mod of classes with, I averaged from a 92 to a 100 in 3 classes. I got a 92, 94, and a 100 in, 3 different classes. So, and I had my JAWS on my computer, so I was able to, work with that. But we can adapt. We shouldn't have to, but it's possible to do it. But I know some blind people who have degrees with an S who are having a hard time finding employment. And the popular belief is because they are blind and that employers don't want to hire them because they're blind. This is what they say, and I don't know. I worked for about 5.5 years for Marriott. Marriott is really big on hiring blind and visually impaired people. I don't know how good they are at promoting, because I was trying to get a promotion within the company and couldn't get it. I was trying to get paid to do what they were asking me to do for free. But and there was some issues where I went back and forth with a manager about that. And I messed up because I ended up just resigning instead of going over this person's head. And that's something that I do regret, because I could have done that job no problem. I would not advise anyone to quit. Just, if you're having a problem with discrimination, you have to fight against that.
And you're right about that, Jennifer. I find that a lot of businesses will not hire people that are blind. They have their own perceptions about our blindness. And then there's also businesses with what they call a glass ceiling, where there's only so far that a woman can go in a business. I'm not saying that that's the case, but there's a lot of businesses that have that glass ceiling where women can only go so far. And on top of it, you're blind as well. So we're not, I'm not implying that that's the case, but that happens quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
go ahead. I'm sorry, Lee.
And you're so true about that, it's the gender status is just as prevalent for males with blindness and disabilities as it is for our women of color with disabilities. Is stats that shows that individuals that are with disabilities that are of color still have the highest rate of unemployment and problems with education. So it is an ongoing process, and I'm glad to say that in front of Congress right now, there's transitioning into Meaningful Employment Act. It's under another name, but it's from the transitioning into meaningful employment that's in front of Congress right now that is hoping to be addressed and have some laws passed to where this can have some recognition to the plight that we have as blind citizens and disabled citizens obtaining employment. There's 70% unemployment rate as it states, but once you go into that figure a little bit, you look into people of color, you may be looking at 85 to 90% unemployment and underpaid individuals. So we run into that quite a bit. And with your story about leaving jobs because of not being treated fairly and being challenged, we've heard that song before, and it's not new. And we want people like you to bring your issues like that to the National Federation of the Blind so that we can look at the merits of those cases and overrule some of these rulings in our courts and in our systems so that we can have equitable and fairness in the workplace. So we're going to take a short pause and come right back with our guests. So stay tuned.
I am a blind vendor, and one of the things that I truly miss is reading Vending Times magazine.
Hoosiers can hear Indiana magazines, circulars, national magazines, and information from across the globe. Learn more by calling 855-963-6476 or visit nfbnewsline-in.org.
It is a fantastic service.
Subscribe free to NFB Newsline today. We're going to welcome you back to the National Federation of the Blind, Newsline, Indiana. And we're discussing employment with our guests today, as several other issues. And we were discussing the employment that's in front of Congress right now with the National Federation of the Blind. And that is called the Transformation to Competitive and Integrated Employment. And we want to talk a little bit about some of Jennifer's experiences as we left talking on employment and her experience. So Jennifer and Florence, let's go with it.
Jennifer, you had mentioned that, at the company that you were with previously, that you ran into an issue where you were kind of challenged because you had the experience of teaching. However, you weren't able to be able to get into the position that you were hoping to get into. So you just left that employer?
I did, and it's because I got frustrated and I didn't know where to go after human resources as far as complaints or, to fight for that promotion. And I believe I got a little discouraged after I spoke to the person in human resources. But they had me, they had me training, on the job training. And a position opened up for a permanent trainer. And I wanted that position because I was doing that job anyway. And when I went to human resources to ask about the position, this person had all kind of discouraging questions. Well, it's not, it's not just for blind people. You have to teach sighted people. No problem. We use an overhead. No problem. Everything is done over the computer. Just send me everything in advance so I can know what's on the overhead. Well, how are you going to work the overhead? You push a button. I had an answer for this person, with every question. And at the end of the conversation, even though I've been working there for 5 years, he said, I don't know, and I walked away and I was really angry and disappointed because these are the same people who encouraged me and who was so excited about me working for them, but they wanted to keep me in the same place. And it bothered me because, it was a repetitive job. I'm a mover. So just sitting there, repeating myself all day, eventually it was like, I can't do this anymore. And then there were teenagers coming in getting promoted over me. I'm like, that's a kid. And it was very disappointing and discouraging. And I ended up, like I said, resigning, and I went back to school and everything. And I moved on. But like I said, I wouldn't encourage anyone. If you really want something, you find a way, find out who you have to talk to. I could have went to the general manager. I could have went to one of the Marriotts themselves if I really, needed to fight. I did not know much about the NFB at that time, but I could have went to the NFB if I'd have known, that's who I went to. Who I
Yes,
could go to.
and I would definitely say that's one of the sources that you can go to. And when you're dealing with human resources, in most cases, they try to adhere to ADA from their own perspective. And that's why we have organizations to stand up for our rights, like the National Federation of the Blind, because transforming to competitive and integrated employment. You're talking about where you can compete and you don't have these lower glass ceilings placed upon you. So I commend you on your efforts. And real briefly, I want to talk about your experience since you moved to Las Vegas regarding the parental rights.
So I adopted my daughter when I lived in St. Louis, Missouri. I had no problems with adopting my daughter. There was an issue in a hospital with a social worker because the biological mom, my daughter was born with THC in her system, so they were going to take the baby from her, and we already made arrangements for me to take the baby. And there was a social worker who did not say that I couldn't have the baby. She just pretty much ignored me when I was in the room. She said, we have parents in line to take this child once. And we explained that, I was there for that reason. And it was like she didn't hear me. She just kind of talked over me. And so we ended up going over her head to a supervisor. And the supervisor helped me get power of attorney so that they could not take the child out of the hospital away from me. So that was the biggest issue that I ran into. After that, it was smooth sailing for me in St. Louis. I moved to Las Vegas in November of 2019, and I joined the NFB in January of 2019. When I joined the NFB, I learned that in the summer of 2019, the Disabled Parents Act was passed. And I was like, what is that? And someone explained to me how blind parents and disabled parents were getting their children taken away from them in the hospital. So it made me nervous because this bill was so new. I was concerned that, even though it was passed, that I would run into an issue. Sometimes I feel like people are looking for a reason. They look for anything to cause problems, to for instance, take my child away from me. I did not run into that issue, but it was a scary thought that that could possibly happen to someone, not me in particular, but to someone. And I'm a strong believer that, the only thing that doesn't work on us are our eyes. We can do anything. We can be parents. And I encourage the blind people that I spoke to here, they were worried about, adopting or having children. They didn't think that they could do it. Not that they couldn't do it themselves, but they thought that it would be an issue. And so I encouraged them, if you want to do it, the first thing that you have to do is you have to really want to do it. And then you don't take no for an answer. And I've been hearing about this type of thing happening all over the country. I'd never heard about it until I moved to Nevada, that people can have their children taken away from them. And when there's a bond with your child. When a woman is pregnant, they bond with this child. Okay. So again, I can't imagine bonding with this child, going through labor, and then having someone take my child out of my arms because I'm blind.
And that happens quite frequently, as you indicated. I don't mean to cut you off on that.
No
but
problem.
That does happen. And here in Indiana, we are working on our parental rights bill here to make sure that that doesn't happen in the state of Indiana. So we're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back with the conclusion of our show. So stay tuned.
If you or someone you know is visually impaired or print challenged, the National Federation of the Blind has a resource you need.
I use NFB Newsline when reading Hammond Northwest Times.
Using NFB Newsline, I read the Christian Science magazine.
Dad, you read Jerusalem Post too.
Learn more by calling 855-963-6476 or visit nfbnewsline-in.org.
Live the life you want. Read NFB Newsline.
It's free.
The National Federation of the Blind knows that blindness is not the characteristic that defines you or your future. Every day we raise the expectations of blind people because low expectations create obstacles between blind people and our dreams. You can live the life you want. Blindness is not what holds you back.
And thank you for welcoming us into your home. And Jennifer, thank you for being our guest today. And we will see you all next week on the National Federation of the Blind Newsline, Indiana.
The National Federation of the Blind, Newsline, Indiana. For more information, go to nfb-in.org. or call 855-963-6476. That's 855-963-6476. The National Federation of the Blind encourages you to live the life you want.